In this video, we are going to look for the scary opening for white that you can use to defeat many of your opponents, and that is by beginning with one of the shocking moves that you are going to see in later part of the video. So here we begin. White plays e4, we reply e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, knight to c3. This is the 3 knights opening, and black replies knight to f6. Now this is the 4 knights game. Now it's White's turn, and White is going to begin with a completely shocking movement, that is sacrificing the knight, where we enter into Halloween Gambit. Now Black takes the knight, then we can push the pawn at d4 attacking the knight. And now Black's knight has two options, whether to go to g6 or to c6. Okay, so in this position, knight comes to g4, which doesn't make sense because we can easily push our pawn at e5. Now this knight is protecting this knight, and if knight goes back, then Black is going to lose one of the knight. So playing knight to g4 doesn't make sense, and instead black must begin with knight to c6. Here, if black plays knight to c6, then we can play d5 attacking one of the knights. Now knight can come to b4, a5, or can go back. But in this game, black decided to play knight to e7. Anyways, if black has played knight to e7, then we must discuss for that. So we begin with e5, constantly attacking the knights. Knight goes back, and once again attacking the knight. Now black decides to exchange the pawn, and now black is feeling happy because there is only one pawn that is attacking the knight, and at last all black pieces are secured. But no, that is not correct, because we can begin with the move queen to e2, giving a check, where black has to give one of the pieces, and that is the knight or the bishop. Anyway, coming back to our position, here we all discussed for playing d5 attacking the knight. We will go through it only. Knight goes to e5 this time. Now we all know that Halloween Gambit is all about attacking the pieces by your pawns. Here we begin with f4. Knight goes to g6. Then we can push our pawn by playing e5. Just constantly attack your opponent's pieces by your pawns, and that is the best that you can do without a knight as well. Anyways, knight goes to g8. Let's say black begins with a logical move in this position, like playing queen to e7. Don't worry, place your queen to e2, and at last black will be forced to take the knight back. Going back, in this position, we are going to look for knight to g8, except for making moves like queen over here. Anyways, in this position, we are going to push our pawn at d6. Black takes the pawn, we also take the pawn, and at last we have created such a close position for black, as we are controlling the e7 square and the c7 square. Anyways, now the popular response is that playing queen to f6 or to b6. Anyways, let's look for developing the knight. If black develops the knight, then black is gone, because we are going to play queen to e2, giving the check. And now, once again, black has to sacrifice the knight or the bishop. So it's generally not a good idea to play knight to f6. Instead, black begins with the move queen to b6, attacking along the long open diagonal. Anyways, we play knight to b5, which is currently protecting the pawn at d6 and giving the check, creating the fork, attacking the rook as well. Anyways, king goes to d8, which is the logical move. f5 attacking the knight. Knight goes to e5. Then comes bishop to f4. Once again attacking the knight. And this time black does something different, and that is not to protect the knight by playing knight over c6. Instead, black becomes with the move f6, protecting the pawn. So here we play queen to d2, then comes e6, attacking the knight. Don't worry, in this position you still have a win, and that is by attacking the queen. How? Bishop to e3, attacking the queen. Queen goes to c6, and at last we begin with queen to a5, giving a check. King goes to e8, and at last knight to c7, giving a check, and at last black is going to lose the rook. King goes to f7, we take the rook. Now bishop takes the d6 pawn. You can still have a chance to protect this knight, not by this square, but by playing to b6. And at last you can see that this king position is completely lost because king has lost a chance to castle and to protect his position. All the pieces are underdeveloped and are at the back rank. Our both of the bishops are developed, our knight is developed, queen is developed. We can further long castle playing queen to b6. In this position, we are going to discuss for queen to f6. Now, both the queen and the knight are attacking this pawn at f4. In this position, many of you prefer to go to knight to b5, creating the fork, attacking the rook as well. You can not consider this plan as a best because in this position black can take the pawn with the knight. Then let us say we begin with knight to c7, giving a check, attacking the rook. King goes to d8, we take the rook. Queen goes to e5, giving a check this time. Now queen cannot come to e2 because knight can attack that queen, so bishop goes to e2. Knight can take the free pawn. At this time, king's position is going to be worst. It was not a good idea to take the rook for our knight. So in this position, what we can do is playing queen to e2, giving the check. And then we can begin with knight to b5, creating the fork. Here black plays queen to e6. Now we begin with knight to b5, creating the fork. This time black decides to exchange one of the queens. So and at last king comes to d8, logical move. Here we begin with bishop to e3, attacking the a7 pawn. And if let us say black plays b6, then we can do short castling. We can also protect this pawn, as this pawn is very important, as it is controlling the important squares which you can use to demolish your opponent's position. Anyways, in this position black decides to do something different, and that is playing a6, attacking the knight. So in this position, what we can do is giving check by our bishop, and that is bishop to b6. King goes to e8, and this time this is going to be very amazing that you all are going to love, and that is knight to c7, giving a check. King goes to d8. Once again there is a check by our bishop. King goes to e8. Once again there is a check. King goes to d8, and again there is a check. Look how we are giving checks after checks, and at last you can see that king position is completely lost. Since we have 4 points advantage,